Hello everybody, this is Nahaz, and welcome to a new show. I'm going to try out something a little bit new today. This is 2v5, where I'm going to get together with prominent players and personalities from around the Dota 2 scene, just to get their perspectives out there. I call it a video discussion series. It isn't going to be a traditional interview series. I'm not interested in going after people. Mostly, I want to give our players and our personalities a platform with somebody that they can trust. And that also means, for example, if I ask a question and one of my guests doesn't feel like answering it, we leave it there. I'm not going to go after anybody. I have with me today for our inaugural episode, Charlie Yang, who many of you will know as the manager of Evil Geniuses. Charlie's been with the team for quite some time, managed them through DAC and through their TI5 victory last year. When did you start with EG, Charlie?
So my career with them began back in January, February of 2014, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 14. At that time, I had actually been contacted to as a potential hire for the job around really late fall, early winter.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd been in the back of my mind for a while. But at that time, I became the sort of stand-in manager or slash agent for the speed gaming team that won MLG Columbus. And during that time, they were my first priority, I guess.
Got it.
So managed that team from the time they played in MLG Columbus up until around I'll go through the timeline, I guess. So started managing that team. After they won, I sort of became their agent, as they were obviously going to leave their old sponsor because it was a giant mess of miscommunication and mishandling. And so they got a lot of different bids. I eventually accepted the C9 offer, and then around that time, EG also hired me. And I knew eventually that Evil Geniuses and Good Game was the organization I wanted to work for, but I couldn't.
Was this right around the time that the Sad Boys roster formed?
Yes.
Okay.
So
you knew from the get-go that you were going to be managing that particular team?
Yeah. I was a little conflicted in choosing between the teams at first. But what happened was when I sent them off to C9, I felt like it would have been a disservice to just leave them immediately. So I managed both teams at the same time for about 3 months, and then after 3 months, I transitioned out of the C9 role. Just managed EG exclusively.
So I think the topic, I don't know how much you're going to be willing to say about this publicly, but I think the topic that we have to start with on everybody's minds is the recent roster shuffle. To me, it just kind of looked like a case of history repeating, with Artur leaving, taking with him another player from the team, this time Universe. Was this basically just deja vu all over again? Were there differences in the two settings?
Oh, there are small differences, but largely I think it is a very similar story. I feel like I can talk about it a little more now, given that by the time this is released, it'll been announced that I no longer manage the team. I haven't since Shanghai.
Okay.
But it's still a bit of a touchy subject for me. I think I think there are a lot of similarities here. Obviously, I think there were lessons learned last time, but I think something a lot of people don't realize, players, the audience, everyone involved, they don't realize that change takes a long time, especially with younger players. Really players in general, because most players are still very young.
As is the scene.
Yeah, we look at this and we tend to think of younger players as just like Arteezy or Sumail. but really everyone here is relatively young, and I feel like we're all still growing up, and maybe less so for you, but
well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's such a new arena for me. It might as well be sometimes. But
right.
Did we? I mean, in either case, did you see it coming though? That's what I really, because I felt like, at least last year in retrospect, when we looked at some of the problems at the summit too, that a lot of people maybe were waiting for the shoe to drop. Whereas this year it was publicized that apparently one of the people in personnel at Good Game didn't know that this was coming.
That's a whole nother story. For the most part, I knew it was coming.
Okay.
And for the most part, upper management rarely finds out that early. Alex knew. I told him around when it was about to happen. It was to be fair, the decision was pretty sudden. The decision to do this, it was pretty sudden. Those players were conflicted for a while, and so there wasn't too much time to give notice. For the most part, people outside of the immediate circle rarely know. I had an inkling it was coming, as I did with the first one, and there were things that we were doing throughout the rest of the year to try and rectify these problems, but hindsight's 20/20, and obviously I don't think we did enough. And I talked to Sahil about it a bit. And,
yeah, that was going to be my next question.
And then he said that I don't know if there's anything anybody could do, which I disagree with. But
I mean, this is one of those that you probably can't answer, but can you give me
it's a pretty shitty time for me to transition out, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not. No, actually, I don't know. I've known you for a while, and I've thought that this was coming for a while. So my own perspective on that is biased. I mean, I think you're leaving the team in really good hands. Like I actually really, I think Phil is very, very sharp.
I agree as well.
But aside from that, I think the question on my mind and a lot of other people's is how much of this is Artur wanting to up and bolt and sort of convincing Sahil to go along, and how much of this were the problems that you're referring to actually involving Sahil as well?
Not entirely.
Okay.
For the most part, that's their business.
Okay. Understandable. It's completely understandable. How surprised are you that AUI came back? Because you were
not that surprised.
Not really.
Yeah.
This is what so were we kind of led astray by all of the community made drama over between Kurt and Peter last year?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, people also do things in the heat of the moment. People get emotional. How they are in that moment is very different than how they are normally. And at the same time, I think the underlying theme in all of these roster changes and everything is that players want to win above all else. Above all else.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all there really is to consider. Are they going to have a better team doing one thing than the other? If yes, then there's your answer.
It's funny because you mentioned this a couple minutes ago about players being immature, and I actually think that there are certain aspects in which that players are more mature than the rest of us.
I said players are young, and it takes a long time to change.
Fair
not
enough.
Necessarily that they were immature.
No, I actually think this is a respect in which the players are acting very maturely. I mean, they want to win, and there's a lot of money involved. What the hell do you expect, in my own view? What do you think about this new EG roster? Do you think that this is a team that's on paper as strong as the team that we've seen for the last 6 months?
On paper? What does that even mean, on paper now?
Well, it's just deliberately open-ended, right?
I think I'm cautiously optimistic. I think in terms of pedigree and skill, I mean, the answer obviously has to be no. I think the roster, the EG roster that you saw immediately after TI5 is probably the most individually talented roster you could have asked for that team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they were a better team, or that this current roster can't be better.
So I've got to ask you about Bulba, about Sam, because he's, I know you are close to him as well, but he's one of my favorite people in the entire scene. And I think the spotlight is now squarely on him. I mean, you had him on as coach last year with the team, and you were the one that immediately after you won publicly credited him with helping out the team a lot. But this is obviously a whole new boat. What do you think is in the cards for Sam going forward?
Well, first of all, for Sam, I think something that a lot of people forget about us and Sam is that he was also our coach during Frankfurt.
Yep.
When around the time when Shanghai was over, a lot of people were like, a lot of people forgot that fact and thought that Sam only coached us for TI, but he was with us for Frankfurt as well. And I think he knows this team really well. He knows his players really well. I think he's one of the smartest players out there in the scene. I think in terms of Dota and knowing people and knowing the game, he might be the smartest. And he's not a bad player by any means at all. I think he's very mechanically skilled. I think he has a lot of knowledge and can apply that really well when he's playing. His problem is mental. His problem is confidence. His problem is fortitude. And I think he knows this as well as most people. And I think the real test for him in the next coming months will be how well has he shored up those issues. And I think something that is going to be really helpful for him, and I think that will be the marked difference between his previous teams, is that he has really strong leaders and personalities on his team that can really help him and guide him through whatever struggles he's facing. With Clinton and Peter and Phil.
Amen. I also notice you include Phil on that list, and that's going to be something we'll come back to because I think that's really significant in and of itself. So we're now sort of halfway through the first iteration of the major cycle, and I know that this is something that a lot of people, including you and I, had talked about back when the majors were first announced. I was very optimistic. I thought that this was going to bring a lot of stability to the scene. I don't think it's necessarily brought the type and the quantity of stability that I had hoped for. What are your thoughts on where we are and what needs to change going forward?
Well, I think we're in, frankly, not that great of a place as a scene. I think Shanghai did a lot of damage to the perception of what this scene is like. And
how so? What do you think the biggest problems are coming out of that?
It was a major hosted by the parent company that was a shit for them. And when people look to this scene for growth, for new opportunities, they're going to look at that most recent big event, Shanghai, and they're going to say, I don't know if this is something I want to be involved in. Just the general perception around the scene in the last, especially among sponsors, around the last year hasn't been that great.
You mean even before Shanghai?
yeah, even before Shanghai. Just in terms of,
about that.
I mean, let's look at the scene in two respects. I'm firstly just talking about the scene in terms of pure business, opportunities to grow, opportunities to increase salaries, opportunities to increase sponsorship. You're typically your sellout shit, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And I think that definitely hurt. I think people tune into Shanghai. It's supposed to be this marquee event, and sometimes you can't even watch the games, and that's just. I mean, I think it goes without saying that's damaging for the scene, and it makes investors, it makes sponsors not really want to be involved or value Dota teams as highly as teams from other divisions.
Okay. I mean, I wish I could put a better spin on this, but I can't. The sad fact is I share that assessment, but I'm more interested. I mean, what would make it better? What do you think are the short, maybe medium term fixes?
Here's the problem. I don't think there are short or medium or temporary or bandage fixes for building a scene, for repairing the sort of systemic problems that we have here, and not just us, but any scene, every scene has, of course, systemic problems. I think maybe ours are just more visible right now,
right,
than others. Here's the thing. I think Valve came in with great intentions. I think they're a really smart company that tried to do what was best here. But obviously, I think we've seen that the way they do things is that they like to iterate, see what works. But here, I mean, this was like relatively early in their run, and it didn't work. And I think what we've seen is that the majors were not a panacea. It's not like a cure-all. It's not something that's supposed to fix stability. And I think little things, I call the majors little, which is ironic, but sort of little things, for lack of a better term, like the majors are, or single things like the majors aren't going to solve all these problems, and they create some of their own, given how large they are. I think if you really want to solve the problems in our scene, the changes have to be system wide. It can't just come from having 3 other tournaments throughout the year that offer a large prize pool and have some weird roster locking mechanism.
Yeah. That was what I was going to ask you. Right?
Changes have to come on so many different fronts. What do you do with other third-party tournaments? What do you do with
give me a direction
their
though.
Production? What do you do with how invites are decided for TI in the majors? What do you do with how players deal with sponsors? How teams are set up? How players are paid?
But give me priorities though, Charlie. Valve hires you tomorrow as the director of Dota 2 major operations. What are the first 2 or 3 items that are on your desk the next day? Like, where do you start in all this? Because I agree with you. Look, my own perspective looking at this, it's a young industry, and young industries go through cycles where they look really good for a while and they look really bad for a while. And it's exactly what you're saying, that it's more a matter of just everybody's got skeletons in the closets and how many of them are visible to the public at any one point. But I really want to get your views on what are the 2 or 3 most promising directions that are worst in need of reform.
I think in terms of I'm gonna play Nostradamus for a little bit, and I think in the next 3 months you're going to see a glut of content and it's going to be too much. And
Too many tournaments?
Too much of a lot of things. And I think, man, I wish I could talk about this more, but given the nature of my new job, I really can't talk about it too much.
I get it.
But like the entire time I'm sitting here in this awkward ass silence, like I'm fumbling around for my words.
Charlie,
I'm trying to think of it in a way that doesn't.
If it helps,
say it in a way.
If it helps, okay. The main reason I'm doing this show is because so many people in the scene are getting their information and are getting their perspective largely from Reddit, which I'm not going to flame Reddit. It's just that there are a lot of things that a lot of us can't talk about, and that's fine. And that's why, we're going to try and do this as a more open and informal forum. So let's go on a little bit. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't really understand. Talk a little bit about the role of a team manager, because I know you have been responsible for a lot of things that people may not appreciate. I mean, you were responsible for getting Sumail's visas, which was like weeks and weeks of work in some cases. What does a manager do for a team on a day-to-day basis? How much does that vary across teams? And the big thing, I've asked you this question before. I want to see if you can give me a different answer now, especially as far as the player pay issue. Like, you can't be responsible for seeing that players are paid solely.
Okay, so this is a complicated issue, and we'll go over all of it. All of it both those questions are intertwined. As far as what a manager does, it's such a nebulous thing.
Sure.
No one when they start, usually gets a list of responsibilities and daily tasks and stuff like that. The sort of catch-all guideline that you're under is do what you have to do, do what you need to, basically. And I would say that's the expectation. Nobody else. At the same time, nobody tells you that. Usually, how people are brought on people are just like players or a team is like, yo, I need a manager to sort this shit out for me, to sort this team out for me. And you pick somebody that you trust, that you feel is fairly competent. You pick him, and he comes on.
What do you mean by competent? So let me put you in the shoes of Alex or somebody a little bit higher up. What if you're hiring the next EG or whatnot manager? What are you looking for in a person? Are you looking for a law degree?
No. Above all, I'm looking for trustworthiness. As a manager, you carry a lot of influence. And you need to be trusted with that to do what's best for both the players and the team and the organization.
Right.
So I need to be able to trust that if I tell you something, you'll both do it, and that you won't tell the wrong people, and that you'll execute.
How do you even approach that? Because there are things as simple as deciding what events you're going to play that are potentially a conflict of interest between what's best for the players and what's best for the profile of the organization.
Right. So, this really goes back to the fact that the role is so poorly defined. When I first started, I had to define the role myself. Mm-hmm. I think every manager sort of struggles with this, that you have to define the role for yourself, what it means for you, what it means for your career, what it means for your players. And when I came in, my first real gig as manager was when I was managing Pot and Bottom, when Ali asked me, players really had no idea what they really wanted a manager for, what I really needed to do. I sort of needed to figure it out for myself. When I first came in, I said, all right, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that these players can play their best, and that'll be my sort of guideline. And then everything else after that, I had to fill in the blanks for myself as I went on. And every year, every month, every week, every day, I've added more to that job description as I've gone on. I've deleted things, put new things in. You sort of have to figure it out for yourself. And Sahil's girlfriend once asked me, what's the hardest part about being a manager? And I think I never really answered her at the time, but I guess maybe she'll be like super mad at me for answering here and not telling her directly, but whatever. I'll buy her food later or something. I guess the answer for me, especially at the time when she asked, was straddling the fence between that, between all the conflicts of interest that you juggle, because there's so much conflict of interest here, right?
Right.
You have to represent the interests of the organization that are, most likely paying you. You have to manage the interests of the players that, you're paid to represent. And
you have no safety net.
I
mean, there's nobody. That's a concern of mine for a long time has been, like, if not you, who is going to look out for the interests of the players?
I mean, in a perfect world, these players would be making enough money so that they could have their own personal managers or agents. But we don't live in that world. That world is not going to happen for a long time. So,
do you really think we're at least 5 years off that world?
We're 5 or more.
We got to get there.
Yeah. And so in the meantime, your team managers are that sort of imperfect solution to this. But
do you trust people to serve in this? At the end of the day,
I trust so very few people in general, and I trust even less to do this. And I think this is probably the hardest part. Is balancing those interests. And trying to find, for me, it was also one of the most rewarding parts as well, is when you find solutions that satisfy both parties. And when you asked about finding people to do this, or if I were Alex and I was finding a replacement or whatever, I was in that position. I hired Phil, and sort of a lot of the middle managers that came in. And I'll go through the process of why I hired Phil. For people that don't know, me and Phil used to work together. He actually used to be my boss.
Oh, I didn't know he was your boss.
Yeah. Back when I the very beginning when I entered the scene, I worked for ESFI for a little while. It was an esports website. It's a publication that we did things like TI previews and interviews and articles and stuff like that. I was a writer on that site. Phil was the one that hired me. Hired is a very loose term here. This is esports journalism we're talking about. But Phil was...
that's another topic that's not going to make the list.
Yeah, Phil was my direct head. He was the editor for the Dota section, and that's how we met. And I've known him for a long time to be really hardworking, very earnest. He has a lot of integrity, and he's a really smart guy. I've known him for all that time. Didn't really need to interview. I trusted him. He's a friend of mine, so he's perfect for the job. For the most part, that's probably how most managers are going to get their jobs in the scene now.
Yeah,
you know somebody.
No, it's a point, and that's kind of the thing that's a point I've made in a couple of conversations recently. I know a lot of people have complained recently about nepotism in the scene, but at the end of the day, the most important factor in selecting a lot of these jobs is who can you trust.
Absolutely.
And the answer to that question is most often in business who you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people. I mean, nepotism is like you hire them solely because of a personal relationship.
Right.
But I didn't hire Phil solely because of a personal relationship. Because of that personal relationship, I knew who he was.
Right.
What he was capable of, and the kind of person he was, and that's the reason I hired him.
So, I mean, I don't know how much you can say on the player pay issue because we've obviously had a situation with Secret that became public
I'm
before
going
Shanghai.
to leave that up to Ebony and the players to talk about. As of this point,
But you have had
as of this point, all I know is that not much has changed. Well, some.
You know what?
Some
I can frame this question
and they're sorting it out. Other than that,
I'm not going to put. Look, let me frame this question to you differently because you've had other issues in the past with your players getting paid from specific tournaments, correct? Oh
yeah, not just tournaments, but it's
Charlie, oh my God, what can we do about this? I guess is my question. This would seem to me where there's you have to have some degree of oversight here. I don't know whether it has to come from Valve. It probably does.
Probably, but I don't think that's
people have to get paid, man.
I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. I think it just comes to the point. I think the solution to this is for us to progress to a point where players are well informed and well represented enough to be willing to pursue legal action or be more careful about who they get in bed with.
But that leaves us exactly with the question we ended on a couple of minutes ago, and that's what's the fastest way from here to there? What do you see any intermediate steps? I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Education.
Yeah.
Player education.
Yeah.
Like I said, like all of this stuff is really solved by us progressing as a scene to a more professional and more well-funded state. That's it.
Well,
everything. And it's really our duty to get us there.
Yeah. And I think again that's part of why the Shanghai thing upset me so much because at the end of the day we need more investment, we need more money flowing in the scene to get us there, and things like Shanghai I think set us back.
Oh, I mean, there's, and not just that, but that investment and that money flowing in needs to be put in the right places.
Yes.
Used by the right people, and already there's so much money flowing into this space. I think the growth that we've seen in the last 3 years, not even just the last 3 years, the last 6 months, has been insane. Where's that money going?
Right.
And how's it being used?
Right. I mean, right now, functionally, we have no organizational structure.
No, we don't.
So, yeah. All right. I guess I wish we had some more concrete solutions, but it's a big issue. That's at the end of the day. All right. So let's go general then. Let's talk about, there's so many things. You said earlier you want to put your Nostradamus hat on, and I wanted you to do that again because what we've got right now is just a lot of chaos. We've got China and CIS looking like they're in complete disarray. We've got SEA and specifically Korea looking like they may be coming of age as regions and ready to compete. We've got teams increasing. Well, all right. I'm being optimistic, Charlie. We've got teams using coaches and analysts more, which I obviously think is a great step forward. We've got more organizations looking down at in C9. The rumor has it now that C9 wants to build a Korean squad.
Sure.
So what do you think is the next big thing? Which of these is significant going forward and which do you think are overblown? And it doesn't have to be something on this list.
All of them.
That's what I thought. I knew you were going to say that.
All of them are overblown. Like in terms of what do you mean by biggest? What do you mean by? I think the significance of all of these things in the grand scheme of things are probably less significant than you think. Added up, I don't know. I think the downfall of Chinese Dota is, or I would say their poor performance at Shanghai is just a little blip on the radar rather than a sign of things to come. I think they do have huge systemic problems within their scene that have contributed to that. That they have problems on the business side, but in terms of the strength of their teams, I think this is more of an anomaly more than anything else. I think for people to say that C Dota is incredibly strong right now is also a hyperbole. I think one team did very, very well in the last few tournaments.
And is now getting stomped on their faces, by the way, in online matches, so who the hell knows?
Well, they lost 3-0 to Fnatic. Who knows what that's indicative of? That's, that's one series when they're back. Who knows? I don't think it's fair to draw anything out of that without better knowledge of the inner workings of that team.
But I guess if all of these are overblown, man, what should we be talking about right now?
What should we be talking about?
Like, what's the next?
I don't think that's a normative question that I can.
All right.
Really answer.
Come on, I'm new at this, Charlie. Give me a break.
I mean, what should we talk? We can talk about whatever we want, right?
We can.
I mean, we are talking about this, and whether or not it's a fair topic or not, who cares?
Fair enough.
I think the reason that C isn't necessarily going to get that much stronger is just because of the regional problems that have plagued it since the very beginning.
Yeah.
Poor infrastructure, shit internet, lack of solid tournaments there that can really grow the scene.
On
more
everything
stability.
everything flows from the second.
And I mean this all comes from this problem of the fact that there can only be so many tier 1 teams. This is such a top heavy team, and if you're not like a tier 1 team, you make roster changes and you disband or you retire or whatever. So I mean that inherently leads to no stability, and no stability is something that hurts every scene.
But is that
especially C?
Is that something that we should? And we could ask this question in general as well. That I agree with you, but the top-heavy situation mirrors what you see in a lot of other sports, and those sports are somewhat healthy, at least. The Yankees still spend more money than anybody else, and they still don't necessarily win every year. So I don't know that the top-heaviness is something that necessarily needs to be eradicated, but it is a potential barrier for growth.
I think certain elements of the top heaviness, maybe eradicated is the wrong word, but maybe the scene could be leveled out a little more.
Okay.
Because I mean, I'm not just talking about prize pools.
No, I start talking about contracts when you go there.
Yes. The problem with top heaviness is that it's not just the teams that win, teams at the very top that get the money. Money is a side effect. The problem is the attention. People really only pay attention to those teams. Nobody gives a shit about anybody else. Nobody gives a shit about the tier 2, the tier 3 teams, the qualifier teams. And so those teams don't get the viewers, they don't get the attention, they don't get the sponsor support, they don't get the stability, they don't get
Yeah.
They don't get sort of anything that goes along with, the lower teams in other leagues, in traditional sports or whatever. I mean, the Browns have sucked since forever, but they're still around. They're still around because they have infrastructure and support around them, regardless of who wins the NFL.
Yeah, but that's the worry though. We don't. I feel like in many respects we don't have that kind of a safety net in Dota, right? Are people really?
No,
are we really building loyalty to the Evil Geniuses brand, or are we building loyalty to 5 players?
For in general, you're building loyalty to 5 players.
Right.
I think Evil Geniuses might have done a better job than many other teams simply because they've been around for so long. They've done such a great job, marketing themselves, and they've lasted longer. For the most part, they've lasted longer than the players that they put on, or that they've had on. But for the most part, for other organizations which are much younger, that's not the case. And you asked about what conversation should we be having. Maybe this is that conversation where we should be talking about how do we lift the entire scene up collectively to where the Browns of the world can be stable, can get support despite
it's bothered me for a long time,
constantly winning, and I think that just
because that's a question that I think I would have to do this full time to answer. You can't just casually look at the scene and answer that question.
Right, and I think you can't just casually look at the scene and have singular solutions for singular problems, because all these problems are intertwined. And to really improve the scene, you can't just throw on the majors. You have to take the scene as a whole and ask yourself, how do the majors affect everything else? How does this affect everything else? And how do we remedy that and that and that?
I think that's a very powerful. Do you think we can learn something from China? Because you brought China.
God, earlier. I hope so.
Well, I'm serious because look, they do. We're talking about infrastructure. They do have some level of infrastructure, at least. And clearly, it's not all sunshine and roses over there, but they do have contracts. I mean, Burning's making $1 million just for streaming.
Oh, that's another can of worms.
Yeah, all right. This is already like almost...
You want to talk about their streaming deals. Their streaming deals are a bunch of people in China get together and they're like, streaming's the new shit, man. Let's create a streaming site. We'll convince a bunch of Chinese investors with way too much money to give us a bunch of money. By the way, there are the growth of Chinese millionaires has been insane in the last years. And these are
Charlie,
tangential, but it does. I mean, this is for the audience, right?
It
does relate to esports. The growth of Chinese millionaires and billionaires have been insane in the last however many years. These are also new millionaires and billionaires that have made their money very quickly, and they don't necessarily know what the fuck to do with it. So they're investing in all sorts of things. They're investing in all sorts of things.
As someone who collects wine as a hobby, Charlie, oh my God, you have no idea.
Yes.
Like the prices of all of the it's silly because they're holding auctions over in China and bottles are going for like 2 or 3 times what they've ever sold for. Anyway.
Yeah. And they have way too much money that they don't know what to do with. They don't really understand the space. They just know that it's the hot new thing. And so they're throwing money into this. They're like, oh, Twitch TV, that sounds cool. Let's do something of our own. And they invest in these streaming sites run by people that also probably don't really know what they're doing either. I mean, that's just esports in a nutshell, right?
Well,
and then these people have huge amounts of investor money, and they're like, let's grow this platform as fast as we can, and we're only going to care about speed and growth. And so they sign these, they give these these deals to top tier streamers or top tier players, that with numbers that just aren't sustainable.
Right.
You can't pay these players that amount of money for this long and expect your business to turn a profit, especially when the money that you make from ads in China and all that is just it's just not a thing. And what they're
not a thing.
I'm sorry, it's just not.
But don't you have
especially on the internet, and so like these numbers aren't sustainable, and they view bot the hell and inflate their statistics to show their investors. It's not necessarily for the audience per se. It's a lot of it is really for those investors with way too much money that don't know what they're doing, and eventually the system is going to collapse.
But hold on a second.
It's really unfortunate
because I think if we're going to go in that direction, I think we have to cut a little bit the other way as well, because what we've got in the Western scene is that the primary source of sort of alternate revenue for players is Twitch. And Twitch is in some ways much better than the situation that you're describing with these just crazy numbers and crazy sites founded out of the blue sky. But at the same time, Twitch's business model was built around variety streamers. It's great for Lyric. It's great for Summit 1G. I do have some questions about whether it's the right model for esports.
What do you mean by that? Should players be making most of their income off of streaming? Absolutely not.
Okay. But
absolutely not. Players should be making most of their money from
teams, from contracts.
Teams, contracts, sponsorships. Right. And the reason that I think what a lot of people may not realize about the value of streaming, of getting big numbers on Twitch, is that you're not really doing it for the ad money. You're doing it for the views.
Yeah.
And if you're smart, you can take those views and you can translate them into sponsorship sales.
Right.
Your money comes from that, not from
the sub button necessarily.
No, not necessarily from the sub button. A lot of people make a shit ton of money from donations. That's something else entirely. But in terms of ad money is like everybody uses ad blocks, so ad money isn't really there.
No, not at all.
It's not. Well, it's not to say that it's not there, but it's not as much as you think.
But I guess, and again, this also may get into that realm of things that you can't necessarily talk about. I've been curious: are we going to see more deals like OG signing with Hitbox, where an organization gets explicitly embedded with a platform, or are we going to see more EG having their logo and their brand on streams, which we kind of see already?
I think you'll see less of that.
Okay. I'm interested in how you think the business model changes.
Oh man, this is this Nostradamus head is too big for me. How does the business model change for teams?
Because I don't think what we're doing right now is anywhere near optimal.
No, it's not.
Which is not a bold statement at all.
That's a mafia play. I think you'll see for a little bit you'll probably see more player-run teams. I think that's a short-term thing. For a little bit you'll see that, but but as we progress as a more mature scene, I think things like OGs and secrets won't be the trend. I think as people become better at managing brands and teams, I think as the industry stabilizes, as players really just as the scene improves for players, there will be less need for them to go and manage their own brands and teams. So I think you'll see less of that. I think you'll see more of your typical one team owner kind of deals.
All right, so we're almost at the end here, and I'm gonna do one sort of corny thing, and I'm gonna say if you had a chance, You do. You have a chance to talk to the community. What out there is actionable? Like, what do you want to see people do? Like, other than stop being stupid about drama.
What I want to.
Like what?
I don't want to tell people to do anything. I don't want to.
But what we're talking about, Charlie, is, you know, we have a lot of people that really love watching Pro Dota and want to see it succeed. I mean, as a fan, is there anything actionable here? Is there anything that you think our community could be doing better to support the kind of growth that we're talking about?
Of course. I mean, of course there can be, like, but I don't want to be telling these people what to do for the sake of, you know, for growing the community. These people should be doing what they want to do because they want to do it, not because I tell them to, or because of, you know, some collective goal to grow esports. Esports should grow because it's good. Esports should grow because this is a product that people want to invest in, that people want to pay for, not as a social cause.
I can't believe you, Charlie. You just gave the economist answer.
So
the two of us.
So no, I'm not going to tell people what to do. Do whatever the fuck you want. If you like this product, buy it, invest in it, do that, watch it, whatever. Enjoy what you enjoy. Don't do it because, you know, I tell you to or whatever. Do it because you want to do it.
That is a very econ professor answer.
And then it's the responsibility of the scene and the people in it to grow it to a point that this is something that you want to help and contribute to. That's that.
Amen to that. So I don't know how much you can talk about it, man, but I want to close with what's next for you.
I work at Twitch Esports now. I've been working at Twitch Esports for the last last month. As of the recording of this video, maybe longer depending on, you know, whenever this comes out. Shanghai was my last event. For everyone that asked, yes, that's what the tweet meant. Is that after Shanghai, no matter what the results or what happened, I would be moving out of my role as manager. It's something that had been planned for a while. And I am moving to the new esports department of Twitch. I said that already. And as for what exactly I'll be doing, you'll see.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, my friend. Obviously, this is my first go at this. We'll probably make some changes to the format. I'm happy to hear people's thoughts about it, but I do think it's really important. I feel like there are a lot of perspectives from players and personalities right now that just aren't getting out there or getting really distorted. So hopefully we can be a platform for that. And thanks again to Charlie for putting up with my bullshit as usual. And we will talk to you guys soon. Any shout-outs at the end here, Charlie?
Man.
That's like the thing you do, right?
What do you mean the thing you do? The thing that I do?
No, that's like the thing all the professional casters do at the very end of the broadcast. I feel like. No, okay.
I don't know. In terms of like conversations that we could be having, is that something we should do?
Probably not.
Should we have like a neat close at the end? You know, like thank you for your blah 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 blah, good night or whatever. Should we have your any shout outs at the end? Sort of thing.
You know what? I'm gonna settle on the side of less bullshit. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it. I will talk to you again soon.
Oh wait.
Go for it.
So you know when the whole roster shuffle thing was going on?
Okay.
And I mean, I didn't really say anything like about it. I tweeted a bunch of like fucking memes and inane bullshit.
Sure.
And which is hilarious because like during that week, I got so many followers from like tweeting nothing substantive at all. It was all bullshit. And I just saw my follower count go up little by little. And I'm just like, these people just want to see me say something interesting.
Yep.
And just like super ironic. But what I did get, which was kind of funny, were a bunch of press requests asking for a comment about it or whatever. And I understand that's their job. Obviously, I didn't really say anything about it, but I'm super I did give them all the same statement, and I'm really disappointed that none of them ran with it. So I'd like to give that statement now.
Do it. I want to hear this.
All right. I typed it up in an email. Hold on, let me find it. The score?
So
right.
nobody printed this.
No, nobody printed this. And I gave a statement that I gave to all. Nobody printed it. So this is my comment on all the roster shuffles. So when we were coming back from Croatia, right? A bunch of us.
This is Dota Pit.
Yeah. When we were coming back from Dota Pit, after the tournament ended, we all were basically on the same flight out from Croatia. So that's like me, the EG team, NV was on there, a bunch of the casters and talent, like Jacob, Blitz, Cap, Toby, all at the airport together, right? And all of a sudden Jacob gets a message from Bulba, from Sam. And Sam asks him, "Hey, what's the fiend, dude? What's the fiend? What's happening there? Who's moving what? Who's moving where?" I think it was Jacob.
And he messages Jacob about this.
He messages Jacob about this. He's like, "Hey, what's the fiend, dude?"
Oh my god.
And then Jacob laughs. And then right after he messages Jacob, he messages someone else in the group. The exact same thing. Pretty sure Sam just like copy and pastes like Skype messages, and he just goes down the list.
How much am I surprised by this? Yeah.
What's the fiend? What's the fiend? Messages all of us. Like right after he gets a message from Jacob, I get a text and it's Sam, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on, dude?" And so we all decide that all right, let's craft the most believable lie possible, and let's all play along with it and tell Sam. So we go along with the idea that QO was gonna join EG. So
Okay.
so somebody told Bulba that QO was gonna join EG, and then the entire time while we were waiting at the airport, it was like 3 or 4 hours, Sam is messaging all of us about
Lord.
this. He doesn't know that we're all together, just reading his messages together and like laughing about this. But he's just like trying to figure out who's getting kicked for QO, what else is happening, and he actually believed it for a while. Like when he was messaging me for confirmation, I pretended to be super angry at him. I was like, "Who told you, Sam? What is this?" And Sam's like lying to me, giving me some like other source or whatever. And it's like, "Sam, I know you're lying to me." And he's like adamant until the very end that he's not lying to me.
So you're saying this was 17 Mafia in one town? Is basically what you're telling me.
Yeah. And then, we got him to believe for like at least like half a day that that QO was going to join EG, and that I was mad at him for finding out.
The other wonderful thing about this, Charlie, is that after we've been at this for an hour now, and after all the shit that we've talked about in this video, the coordination, the people in the scene getting together, almost everybody relevant in the Western Dota 2 scene finally gets together and coordinates on something. And it's trolling Bulba.
Yep. And then after I got off the plane from Croatia, I get this. I find on my phone, this long ass message from Sam. It's like, "Sorry, dude. Sorry. He's just like, I'm just worried," and he's just explaining all his feelings for why he's so fiendy and everything, and why he wants to know. And he's like, "Please just tell me." And then a little bit after that, I get the message. I got fucking pranked? Question mark.
Oh wow. Yes, Sam. You did.
Yeah.
That
was my statement, and none of them printed it, and I'm disappointed.
Oh, I actually can't believe that's a massive editorial fail right there. Well, that is the perfect note to end on. Thanks, guys, for watching. We will be hopefully back soon with another one of these. I think I may have a couple people lined up. But hope you guys enjoyed, and feel free to leave feedback in the comments.